Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two compulsive book nerds are going to kick the dogs out of the office. Get out.
Look at
Get
how
out.
happy they all
Go,
are.
including you. No.
They were so proud and so happy. How dare you crush their dreams?
I don't know if you could hear Mike cackling from the other end of the house.
That was delightful.
I might leave that in. I might edit that out. Anyhow, this is
Who's
the
the
pod.
what was the one, the second one on the couch, like in the towards the shelving unit?
I would have to look at the video to be able to see. I was too
Okay.
busy standing up and screaming.
They were the most delighted about the situation.
Okay. I'm assuming it wasn't the puppy.
Uh no, I think it might have been the middle one.
Ruby? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this is
Still
the
smaller, but not baby
that's
small.
that's Ruby.
Okay.
So this is the history podcast where my dogs will sporadically enter into the episode to get edited out later and might have indelibly entered this episode despite the bestest of my intentions. They are not the bestest of dogs right now. But anyhow, this is a history podcast where two friends will compulsively consume history and then come back and tell each other the stories we've only recently learned. I'm host number one. I'm Theresa.
I'm Angie.
That's host two. She waited knowing her introduction was coming and then started drinking out of a bendy straw.
Listen, you're never too old for a bendy straw, and if you're gonna be judgy about it, it's metal, only the top is bendy.
Look, I'm not judging for that.
Okay.
I was trying to tell the podcast listeners at home what that delay could have been.
Imagination, Teresa. It can be anything.
Um, I have a story that I want to start with.
Go.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the story of Rosemary Bryant Mariner.
Okay.
All
I
right?
can't say I know this name.
Okay, good. I'm grateful for this, and I'm going to change that. My sources, Wings of Gold. It's a book. It's the story of the first woman naval aviators by Beverly Weintraub. NBC News, A Badass Pilot, Captain Rosemary Mariner, first woman to fly a tactical fighter jet dies by Elizabeth Chuck. And podcast Literary Aviatrix, the Aviatrix Book Club, October 2022, featuring the author, Beverly Weintraub.
Okay. I'm excited. Let's go.
Okay. Rosemary Mariner, she ends up having a 24-year military career. She starts it as one of eight women chosen as an experiment of women pilots in the Navy. In 1974, she's the very first woman to fly a tactical jet. In 1990, she's the first woman to command an aviation squadron. So
Yes.
these are just some highlights. She is one of the first women to serve aboard a Navy warship, the World War II era aircraft carrier, the Lexington. She qualified as a surface warfare officer. She's logged more than 3,500 flight hours in 15 different types of aircraft.
Oh, that's a skill set right there.
So anybody who knows anything about these planes, she's done the A4C Skyhawk, the QF-86 Sabre, all the way through to the S2 Tracker and the A7E Corsair 2. Even
Okay.
crazier, she's had 17 aircraft carrier landings.
That's such a skill.
It
Get
is.
a girlfriend.
She had a master's degree in national security strategy from the Naval War College and was a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And she was the Joint Chief of Staff's chair in military strategy at the National War College.
Wow.
Okay, so that's just the sizzle reel. Are you ready for her life?
Let's go.
Okay, she's born Rosemary Miriams. Miriams, actually, it's not. She's not how she's born. Miriams is her stepfather's last name. She is the daughter of an Air Force captain, World War II U.S. Army Air Force veteran. He dies in a plane crash when she's only 3 years old.
Mm,
And her mom is a World War II U.S. Navy nurse.
okay.
So, serviceman is in her blood. She grows up in San Diego watching the planes at Miramar Naval Base take off. And when she's 8 years old, she knew that that's what she wants to do with her life.
I mean, yeah,
And in the podcast that Beverly Weintraub is featured on, she tells a story about how when Mariner would babysit her younger siblings, she would take them to watch the jets land,
that's awesome.
which is such a cool older sibling thing to do.
It is. I take the boys to watch the dear listener at home. We live in Northern California, that is kind of the heart of air attack for wildfires. And when the big ones come through, I take my sons to watch them
Hmm.
because you're right up there on the runway. It's a lot. It's actually a really cool experience.
Oh, I can only imagine, honestly. Um, by the time Rosemary is 17, she's earned her pilot's license.
Okay,
And she scrimped and saved for this thing. She was cleaning houses and washing planes to pay for her lessons.
that's awesome.
She was the first woman to graduate from a professional pilot program at Purdue's University Aviation Technology Department.
I didn't know Purdue had that.
Yep, apparently. Now, here's something even crazier. She is young, obviously, she's college age, and that's when she hears that the Navy is going to open its doors just a crack for women aviators. And so she speeds through college at Purdue. She graduates in 2.5 years.
Wow.
She's only 19 when she receives her bachelor's degree.
Wow.
So she is motivated, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
Now, what she's heard about was it's 1973. There was a program devised by the Maverick Chief of Naval Operations named Admiral Elmo Zumwalt Jr., which is a hell of a name. And
I am just picturing that person right now, and they are completely as you would imagine, I think.
I mean, you have to have a certain level of chutzpah to rock a name, first name, Elmo.
Truly. Yes, you do.
Now, he's launched this program for women aviators against the backdrop of women's liberation movement.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Now, I need to give you even more background because I know when we covered the Night Witches, I expressed that the Russian military didn't allow for female combat pilots because they were thinking about DEI, about equity between the genders. They allowed female combat pilots because there was a personnel shortage.
Do what you gotta do, I suppose.
Yep. Now, the US is experiencing the same looming personnel shortage because we have the upcoming end of the military draft from the Vietnam War.
Okay.
I mean, and that's one of the things where you hear and you go, oh, I can see the cause and effect. So we
Yeah,
have a
okay.
bulk of men getting ready to leave. We're going to experience a vacuum. And so the concept of opening the door for women aviators in the Navy makes it much more palatable because the Navy is trying to make themselves seem more desirable than the Army.
Okay.
So if they allow for women aviators, now they have a greater candidate pool.
Mm-hmm.
So Zumwalt, he ends up being an outspoken supporter of greater opportunity for the female enlistees and officers. He sees them as this untapped resource, and he kind of views this experiment as the first step towards fundamentally changing the roles of women in the Navy.
Nice. Okay.
So
I like
he's
him.
very progressive.
Like him. Okay.
Rosemary's one of 6 women who make it through the women's officer school.
Only
Eight.
6.
Well, there were 8 that were brought in.
Okay.
Now, while they're there, she's taught that it's, quote, undignified for female officers to sit atop bar stools. Yeah, your quizzical
So,
look. Hmm.
so do we just stand there then?
I mean,
Or do we just
maybe
not go into the bar, period?
you're supposed to maybe sit at a booth, maybe sit at a bistro table with a high back chair. I mean, I'm not sure what the alternative was, but that was one of the lessons that the women were taught.
That seems so useless at the end of the day. Like, okay.
Yeah. But she goes through, she learns all of this. She earns her wings of gold. And this is the official winged anchor insignia that denotes the naval aviator. And it's the exact same training program as the male pilots, aside from they're also taught not to sit on top bar stools.
Okay. You know,
Um, while they have the same training program, the women are not allowed what's called aircraft carrier qualification. They're not allowed to land on aircraft carriers.
that's so stupid.
Well, and the reason is they want to preserve and protect the women from combat. And that's a combat vessel. And that vessel could, even if we're not in combat or it's not headed on a combat mission, it could be used for combat. So we have to keep them safe.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But I should mention that the carrier qualification, that is the defining achievement for naval flyers, and it's a prerequisite for command. So if you don't get carrier qualification, you cannot get command. But women should have the same opportunities as men. Do you see?
Agreed.
Do you see? Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, oh no, you can do anything a man can do, but you can only get command with carrier qualifications, and you can't have
Right.
carrier qualifications because
Because you have ovaries.
yes.
Okay.
So they know everything. They're fully qualified to fly, and they're just simply not permitted to exercise the skills that the country might need, in case of combat.
Like, I don't know. Desert Storm?
I mean, and it's funny you mention that. So hold that thought, okay? Because you're mentioning the 90s, and so we're still in like the late 70s.
But, like, we're not too far.
No, 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 no. But everything leads up to something else.
Right. Okay. I guess that's true.
Now, the public, when they learn about all of this, they have I mean, it's surprising, maybe it's not surprising. They have a response to women being put in naval cockpits. In a New York Times article in January of 73 that said there will be, quote, no prohibition against their carrying feminine gear such as makeup in their capacious pockets of the flight suits, should they desire. The writer of this article goes on to say that the male pilot's also allowed to carry personal objects as well. Like, so,
Um, Capacious pockets is my new favorite phrase.
yes, ruminous.
Love this for me.
Hmm. Um, the newspaper coverage, when it's talking about these female pilots, always mentions their physical traits, like their blue eyes, they're petite, they're blonde, they're brunette, they're fetching bangs, and also their marital status.
Of course. Yes, it's the 70s equivalent of Tinder
Hmm. Hmm.
on accident. Like I'm sure that that's not what the pilots were going for, but here we are.
Right. Now, and see, this has been one of those interesting things because in the book, you kind of hear like Rosemary realize like what is happening. She like as she was younger, she didn't necessarily catch all of the misogyny in the reporting and all of the
Right.
needs for the photo shoots. But as she gets older, she realizes that this is a PR stunt every single time. And it
Well,
is
yeah.
more and more obnoxious.
I was literally just having this conversation with Ian the other day about like particularly famous women um of all sorts of types that are out in the world doing things and all the media can just tell us is whose dress they're wearing today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, cool, I guess, if I wanted to go buy that dress, but I was more interested in what said woman was doing.
What she thought
Like,
about why she did this, what she overcame to get here. You know,
right,
the same questions we would ask a dude.
yeah. Or if we're gonna do it that way, then, sir, where's your jacket from?
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah.
I
Just
mean,
having this
just same
conversation.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
Or the women who are famous in their own right, but married to a famous man. And so you hear so and so's wife. It's like, you mean the doctor who holds several patents in her field?
Yes. My
Anyhow,
goal in life is for Ian to be referred to as so and so's husband.
ooh, I love this for you.
He seems cool with it. He's like, I don't mind being arm candy. That works just fine.
Right? Now, okay, so all this is happening with women and they're reporting, but women are doing their best and they're starting to really rise up through the ranks of naval aviation. And as this is happening, this is occurring under some really steady support from male superior officers. And it's these forward
Awesome.
looking people that really understand the historic importance that the women that they're shepherding is going to have. And so they're doing their best to make sure that these women are successful. And one incredibly poignant example is the commanding officer of Rosemary's first squadron, a black commander named Captain Raymond Lambert.
Okay.
And Lambert, he was the first black squadron commander at NAS Oceana.
Okay.
He knows women are legally barred from flying jets, but runs a request up the chain of command to get her permission. And he gets his admiral to agree.
Love this. This is the first step to being able to land on an aircraft carrier.
Eventually. Now, again, what they're doing is illegal, but the admiral's like, yeah, of course she can fly this jet. And in the book they talk about how he seemed like a proud father telling her that she gets to do the same thing that literally all of her coworkers can do.
Love this. Okay.
Yes, you too can use the copy machine. I've gotten permission for you.
Here's your note.
Yeah. Now, it's Lambert who draws on the lessons of Black service members who integrate into the U.S. military to empower Rosemary in her own quest for equality. And the book, I mean, I can't recommend the book enough. And the book's Wings of Gold, which I said before, but incredible book. There's this powerful story where in talking with her, he reaches into his desk and he pulls out a file of all the black naval officers and black aviators. And this file is like active duty, retired. It's everybody from ensign to admiral. It's everybody.
That's awesome.
And he's keeping tabs on them. This is before cell phones. Email may or may not be a thing. So everything is extremely manual. And he's watching out for every single one of them.
That's awesome.
And he tells her the only way Black service members are going to succeed in the Navy is by working together, not being like in one unit where it's just like everybody is Black and all like segregated together, but distributed, dispersed, and networking.
I feel like that's humanity in general. He's not wrong.
No. And he tells her that she needs to do the same for the female aviators.
Hmm. Love that. Okay.
She takes all of this to heart. Um, she said, he taught me how Black men in the Navy and all the services networked. He told me how it was going to be and what we would need to do as women. And she said this to the University of Tennessee, where she taught U.S. military history for years. And that was in November of 2017. Um,
Oh
she goes,
wow. Okay.
she goes on to say, He was adamant that women should never have a separate chain of command. Racial segregation in the armed forces was a major barrier that African Americans had to overcome.
Facts.
Hmm. And it really was, when you read the book, you realize just how impactful having him who understood the struggle so well, shepherding and mentoring her. In 1982, she was named one of 10 outstanding working women of 1982 in Glamour magazine. And then she appears on the game show, What's My Line? Like,
Okay.
so she is like in pop culture.
Love this.
When she's in Glamour magazine, she is quoted as saying that the machine gun is the great equalizer.
Okay.
Like, she's championing for women to be able to go into combat because she's like,
I'm
your plane doesn't know your gender.
well, it doesn't. And there's a high chance in an airplane, neither does the other guy.
Yeah. If you
Right.
keep your helmet
Hmm.
on, nobody knows.
Yep. And we're just, yeah. Okay. Go on.
So we're going to fast forward a little bit to 1991. She's still having her career, and she goes on to argue publicly about the tailhook scandal. And I'm going to explain what that is because this was bonkers, but it perfectly
Okay.
encapsulates the shenanigans at, as the kindest way to say it. Now, the Tailhook Convention is this huge convention, happens in Vegas. And oh, gosh, okay, it's massive, but it's basically for aviators, for contractors. It is like the who's who event. And in 91,
So it's the Comic Con of pilots.
for Navy pilots,
Right.
because I think tailhook is the term used when you land on an aircraft carrier and you hook on the cable on the
The
landing
cable,
deck.
yeah.
Okay, that's a tailhook. So this is the event, right? Now, during the 1991 tailhook convention, Navy pilots, male, should go without saying, sexually abused military and civilian females in the halls of the Las Vegas Hilton.
That is the opposite of okay.
Yeah, and a
But we
third.
can't sit on bar stools.
No, 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 no. Well, the women aren't supposed to sit on bar stools, but the men are allowed to get away with this. During this event, a third of the Navy's aviators are at this event. So this is, like I said, the who's who. There is a massive amount
Yeah.
of people here. Mariner, when she's reflecting on this, she frames her argument like this. She says, during the symposium, Lieutenant Monica Revin, I should have figured out how to say her name, Ravindiniera, stood up and asked 9 admirals when women would be allowed to fly in tactical combat missions off aircraft carriers. I'm going to note here that Mariner herself had asked this same question at the 1979 Tailhook Convention.
Oh, okay.
Okay. When Rivadinera asked this question, the crowd boos and hisses her, and the 9 male admirals remained silent.
Okay. That's
Like,
so dumb.
yeah. Now,
Like,
go ahead, please.
no, I'm like, are we trying to protect the boys' club that is living on an aircraft carrier? Like, it's so stupid to not allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Like, it go to me, it's so dumb, but I automatically goes back to all the years that sailors were afraid of women being on boats.
Yeah,
Like,
because will affect
is
the seas. Like I don't know what
yeah.
sort of mythical capacities that my memories have, but apparently they carry all of the magic.
I- I'm told.
Yeah, I'm never able to utilize it when and how I want.
Just I know it's there, okay?
Yeah, I'm like standing in line at customer service, just can't rally a storm,
Be so useful.
wouldn't it? Okay, goals. So she asked this question. The admirals remain silent, and this silence, and while she's being berated by all of her peers, proves to everybody in the crowd that there's no support for equity. And it goes on to expand on everything that happens later on, like where women are horrifically assaulted getting out of the elevator, walking down the hallway, trying to get to their hotel room. Like you're
Right.
there just in Vegas to be in Vegas, and your shirt is removed as men are grabbing you. They may or may not be your
Right.
coworkers. They may or may not be your husband's coworkers.
Right.
Now, what she goes on to say is that this problem will continue as long as women are barred from combat duty because she's looking for straight equity across the board.
Right.
Military.com had an article about the scandal stating that Navy squadrons footed the booze bill, which could run upwards of $7,000 per suite per day.
How many people are in a suite?
I don't know, but not enough for, I mean, me in a class, I don't know, could rack up 7 grand in today's money. And this is 1991. They spent a total of $190,000, which in today's money is 500,000
On
on
booze.
booze.
And we can't let women fly off aircraft carriers.
No, we're too drunk to see if that's a dumb idea.
Wow.
Now, she's talking about how the, you know, the full concept of the whole let's just be boys will be boys, the old man's club, whatever it's called. That entire thing illustrates that the men weren't going to be held accountable. When the admirals don't stop and shut down the booze at the symposium, nor do they answer the question, they're illustrating the institutional discrimination and using it to cover the individual assaults. Like all of it is just carte blanche.
Mm.
Just be thankful we
Okay.
let you into the room, little lady.
My word.
She goes on to say that the sexual harassment that was experienced will continue to be a problem in the military as long as women are barred from combat duty, as long as they're considered institutionally inferior, just as in matters of race is separate, is inherently unequal. And she said this in the Los Angeles Times in 1992.
We were alive then.
We were. And at many points in the book, at different points of where she was interviewed, she says, look, if you let women fly combat planes today, I could not do it. I am too old. I have aged out. But I am fighting not so that I can do it, but so that those coming behind me can.
Mm-hmm.
There is a woman named Catherine Sharp Landeck. She is the historian of the Women's Air Force Service pilots, so the WASPs of World War II. I mentioned her last week. She's also a professor at Texas Women's University. She was friends with Mariner and said Mariner's intelligence was one of her signature assets, along with her willingness to assist others to reach their potential.
I love that.
Uh, she goes on to say she shaped generations of people with that confidence in them, helping them find their path, which I want everybody to live in such a righteous way to have somebody say that about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the last quote I have from her is she was a badass pilot too. Landing on carriers, that's pretty badass. You're not just landing a jet. You're landing a jet on a runway that's rising up and down in the seas. And I think as a woman doing it, you've got everybody on deck watching.
Mm-hmm.
In 1997, Rosemary is interviewed by the Washington Post, and she was unimpeachable. She said that Navy women should receive the same training as men and be allowed to gain sufficient experience to repay the country for that training because training is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Segregation of any type, whether by gender, race, or any other measure, destroys unit cohesion, and inequality is an insult to the integrity of the chain of command. It's quite simply a matter of honor and respect.
Get it, girlfriend.
Later that year, just before retiring from active duty and joining the University of Tennessee's Center for Study of War and Society, she specialized in military history at the juncture between war and consciousness. She wrote in the Washington Post, quote, integrating large numbers of high quality female recruits into non traditional fields made the all volunteer force possible. Combat exclusion policies do not protect women from coming home in body bags or becoming POWs. Rather, such arbitrary restriction hurts combat readiness by limiting the flexibility of commanders to use all of their soldiers however needed, especially under fire. In terms of plain fairness, if American women are good enough to die for their country, they're good enough to fight.
She's not wrong.
Yeah, because we have women who were flying just standard planes, being stationed near combat zones, and those that doesn't stop them from being attacked. It doesn't stop from mechanical failures. Like
Right.
these things happen. We had wasps die during World War
Hmm.
II, and they were not
Right.
anywhere near the front lines. Mariner advises on the naval defense policy and continued integration of women into the armed forces until her diagnosis of ovarian cancer. This disease would ultimately take her life January 24th, 2019.
Did she ever see another female pilot land
Yeah,
on
she
deck?
I believe so. I believe so. She served as an expert on military matters for a number of media outlets and mentored young men and women in the classroom. Although throughout she remained a trailblazer, a scholar, and advocate for talented young people who wish to serve as she served. When she passed, a female crew of pilot and crew members volunteered to participate in the Sabre 9 flyover that winter afternoon. It was the very first all woman flyover, and it made news.
Mm.
Many had heard her words or heard her speak. Several had met with her, and they were aware of the debt that they owed her as this groundbreaking aviator. One of the female pilots, Lieutenant Commander Paige Block, posts on Twitter, I told my parents my dreams of becoming a female fighter pilot at age 8. I am blessed to serve and regard the pioneering woman of naval aviation as foundational in making my dream possible. I met Captain Rosemary Mariner. She was a beacon of leadership. Another person that flew in that flyover in a video release said, we have top gun graduates. We have a commanding officer, an executive officer, and a combat veteran. None of us are the first. She was the first. The fact none of us are first is literally a testament to her. Lieutenant Amanda Lee goes on to say, when I come into a ready room now, I'm a pilot first, a person second, and my gender isn't really an issue. It's people like Captain Mariner that paved the way for us. And another person put it succinctly when she said, I wouldn't be standing where I am today if it wasn't for her and the other first female naval aviators. At her funeral, her husband of nearly 39 years, retired Navy Commander Tommy Mariner, said, the fact that it was an all female crew wouldn't flatter Mariner, but she certainly would not have said that that component was necessary. It's wonderful that the Navy can do that. And it's good that to have so many women where they can fill out all the cockpits with women, he said, his voice breaking. But that would not have been a requirement for Rosemary. January 2nd of 2024, history.navy.mil published an article about Mariner. And as of February 8th, 2025, that page is unavailable.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if this missing page is organic or planned. Presumably, this could be the result of recent administration changes that in a push to erase the notable achievements of women and marginalized communities. As a history buff, I am concerned about this missing page. Looking at the Wayback Machine, there is an instance of this page saved January 19th, 2025. Now, despite all of this, I want to end on a little bit different note. Mariner's husband had said that he is proud of the doors that his wife opened for women in the armed services. She never thought of her work as being revolutionary because she was female. She had hoped what she was doing would become the norm. She considered people, not men and women, he said, from a standpoint of getting the job done and the way you are treated in the world, she felt people ought to be treated the same. He said she took her cancer diagnosis the same way she approached everything else in her life, by educating herself as much as possible about it, relying on her Roman Catholic faith to get her through tough times, and by thinking of it as her mission. When she was diagnosed 4.5 years ago, he said doctors believed she only had several months to live. In her 2027 or 2017 interview with the University of Tennessee, she emphasized the importance of persistence and said, life can deal you a lot of curveballs. You hang in there and you don't quit.
Do you have pictures?
I do. You're going to need to describe it though.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm just enjoying it. Um, she, she is in full flight gear, standing in front of what I can only assume is her plane. And I can't remember exactly what this plane is called, but it looks like it's smiling at her in
Yeah,
the background.
I think it's a fighter jet of some sort.
It is, but I can't, I don't remember. The front piece is throwing me off a little bit, but
Yeah.
she is either getting ready to load up or had just finished her flight. Um, she is exactly this photo had to be taken. Was this taken in the 90s? It had to be. Her hair is screaming 90s mom.
Yeah, it very much so is. But I'm
Yes.
unsure of the date of any of these. That is a picture of her as a blonde in the
In her,
quintessential Navy yearbook photo kind of style.
yep, you got the flag in the background. Um, she's got her medals on her chest and her wings above them.
Hmm. And
Oh, I
we've
love it.
we've got my favorites right here.
Yeah. Are those both from in the air, it looks like?
The bottom one is from her in a cockpit, and this one I believe is her on the ground checking out her plane. But she's in her
Oh,
flight suit
okay.
in both of them, black and white. This bottom one here is actually on the cover of the Wings of Gold book.
That's awesome. It looked like in the picture above that she was in the air because of whatever's in the distance.
Mm.
Looks like sort of a body of water. So it made me wonder if it was taken out of like the side of a helicopter or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so because I don't think she was a helo pilot.
Oh, I
Um,
wasn't suggesting that. I just that it kind of has that
that vibe
look to it. Yeah. I love her flights. Her flight suit is fabulous.
with its capacious pockets.
with its capacious pockets. And she's doing, you guys, in every one of these pictures, she has her hair down. I couldn't do it. God bless her.
All those little stray strands just bugging your face.
Oh, yeah, couldn't do it.
But I
I
sped through my notes.
I love her.
I didn't realize I went that quickly. But
You sure
yeah,
did.
I am.
You sure did.
I know last week when we covered the stories we covered, I had blindly assumed that when the Tuskegee pilots or the Tuskegee Airmen and the Wasps were re-included in Air Force history, that the rest of everybody was saved. But I don't think they are.
Hmm.
And that bothers me on a visceral level to know that the erasure of people exists just to make a handful of people in the dominant culture feel better and more secure about their already secure positions.
Well, when you're secure, you have to keep it that way. Otherwise, what website was it missing from?
It was missing from history.navy.mil, which is a government website ran by the
Right.
Navy.
Page not found on this server. Yep.
Yeah,
Well, the Navy.mil still has her page up.
share your screen.
So I'm choosing to be optimistic that perhaps something is wrong with the website. If I could get to my share button, things would go a lot better. Can you see it?
I can see that it says, okay, can you make your screen bigger? Because I
I
can't
would
see
love
your full
to.
address.
Okay, here we go. I'm trying to, but
Because what I want to see
these
is the
Zoom
URL.
commands are in the way, and every time I click them, I mute
Okay, so
myself.
Navy in the past, or women in the Navy, backslash past.
I wish
Okay.
this would go away. It's
But
so it's
Trailblazers,
www.navy.mil.
yeah, no, that I just wanted to see the full URL. But the people
Oh,
forward slash Trailblazers forward slash Rosemary Mariner, that's one that's done.
there you go.
That's the one that is kaput.
Gotcha.
Because I'll share my
So
screen.
I think this was the first one I tried to click. This
Yeah,
one?
that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I've had pages that just organically go down, but
Right.
that shouldn't be.
100% agree with you. She was so cute. I know that that's completely irrelevant, but like her hat and all of it, like she just wore everything so well. Again, not relevant because how she wears things doesn't matter to how she lives as a person.
Right. But we should pivot to your story.
I'm stuck on Captain Rosemary Bryant Mariner. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There there we go. Apparently I had to stop sharing screens to get my screen to actually do something. Let's see. Okay.
It was rewarding to see you wipe away tears as I was crying.
Well, um so yeah, I guess you've got that going for you. Okay. I found it. All right. Womenshistory.org has a biography on my person. PBS.org has an American experience feature. Um, NewYorkHistory.org, Modernizing America, has a fun little article. Two National Park Services. Thought you would be proud to know. They're just chilling, hanging out. And there is an author that her name is Tanya Mitchell. She recently finished a book about my my guest that I'm bringing to the show, if you will. And you know what? I didn't write the name of the book down, so I'll have to find that and add it to some notes somewhere. But I'm going to tell you the story of Nellie Bly. Are you familiar with her?
The one
You
who
sound like you're
the
familiar.
investigative journalist who goes into Bedlam.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken her from my list. Congratulations. Well done.
Yes. Well, because you've taken like three of mine, and I told Ian the other day that I'm actually shocked you hadn't done her first. Um,
I mean, truly, she has all of the hallmark characteristics of somebody I would do.
I, she does, and I so let me gift her to you. Nellie Bly, or rather Elizabeth Jane Cochran, was born May 5th, 1864, in Cochran's Mill, Pennsylvania. Her grandfather was an Irish immigrant, and her father, Michael Cochran, owned a successful mill and also served as an associate justice of Armstrong County. He basically works his way into success. Like my guy is the opposite of Button Gwinnett.
Okay.
He does well for himself, he does well for his family. The author Tanya Mitchell points out in her research that he also, along with being successful in the mill and being an associate justice, he also holds real estate. The home that she was born in was a grand 10,000 square foot estate.
So just a small little bungalow.
Yeah, just a little bungalow. So for at least a little while, her family is living like the actual American dream that her grandfather crossed an ocean for, right? Which I think seeing that actually happen is really inspirational. However, in 1870, when Bly was just 6 years old, her father dies suddenly and there's no will. Now, previous to his marriage with her mother, Mary Jane Cochran, he had been married before and had several children with the first marriage. I believe at his death he had 10 kids. So it might have even been more than that, but there's a lot going on here, right? And he has no will, and so her family is basically unable to maintain the land or their home, and so they leave Cochran's Mill. Her mother remarries, divorces in 1878 due to the abuse that she's receiving from her second husband. In fact, at her mother's divorce trial, Elizabeth testifies. She's only like 14. She says, quote, "My stepfather has been generally drunk since he married my mother. When drunk, he is very cross, and cross when sober." And I just think the kind of courage it takes at 14 years old to stand in front of a courtroom and defend your mother is wild to me. At 15, blind rolls she'll be excuse me, her last name is Cochran at the moment. She'll change it to Bly shortly.
Sure.
She enrolls at the state normal school in Indiana, Pennsylvania. This is the point where she adds the E to her last name, becoming Elizabeth Jane Cochran. She wants to look and sound more sophisticated, which I think is hilarious. Like, I don't know why that E mattered, but there we are. Um, However, given that there are significant financial struggles within her family, right? Like they had no real way of dividing the money up when her father died. So her mother, her brothers, and herself are pretty much, I don't want to say left destitute, but they run out of money fairly quickly. Um, just because we didn't plan for death in this
Right.
particular circumstance. So she has to leave school after just one term because the money runs out. She moves in with her mom to Pittsburgh, where her two older brothers had already settled. In Pittsburgh, she helps her mom run a boarding house while looking for other more full-time lucrative work. Now, by the time her family's living in Pittsburgh, the city at this point is known as the steel capital of the country and has earned the reputation as being, quote, the blackest, dirtiest, grimiest city in the United States. That includes the little area of the unincorporated portion of Allegheny City where her family lives. This is wild to me. The city has only 60,000 residents, but seven newspapers.
Well, they
To
didn't
me,
have the
that's
internet.
insane. Right, like that's true, but like seven? I just feel like that's one for every street corner with only 60,000 residents, but that's just me. Um, Elizabeth would spend the next few years looking for ways to help support her family. Time and time again, she would discover that there's less opportunity for her than for her older, more educated brothers. It's 1885 by this point. She's about 20 years old. She's reading one of the many newspapers in the area, and there's this rather frustrating series of articles in the Pittsburgh Dispatch written by the Quiet Observer, or QO, with the pen name of Erasmus Wilson. Um, this person, the Quiet Observer, if you will, is one of the most popular columnists like around, so everybody's rating him. But in this series of columns, he's basically saying things like women belong in the home, they need to be doing the domestic work, they need to be doing things like sewing and cooking and raising the children. And he called the women working outside of the home basically a monstrosity.
Oh,
Elizabeth is not having this. And having like lived in the need to work along with many and of the other young ladies in her community, she writes an open letter to the editor calling for more opportunities for women, especially those responsible for the financial well-being of their families. She signs the letter, quote, lonely orphan girl. The newspaper editor, a man called George Madden, was so impressed with what he read that he publishes a note asking for the lonely open girl to reveal herself. Excuse me, the lonely orphan girl. I don't know why I keep pronouncing it open.
I
The
think you're
lonely
just,
orphan girl.
if I were to write it, there'd be a strange or apostrophe there.
Yeah, it's very weird to come off the.
You're streamlining
Anyway,
it. That's what you're doing.
yeah, I'm taking that H all the way out.
Right.
She does reveal herself, and she does so by just walking straight on into the paper. And they basically hire on the spot. This is the point where she takes the pen name Nellie Bly, which is what I'll be calling her from here on out. Fun note, nod to my mom here. The pen name evidently comes from a song that the American composer Stephen Foster wrote. My mom adores Stephen Foster and for years was convinced we were related to him.
I'm assuming that's a big old negatory.
I have yet to find proof. If we are, he's probably a distant cousin. But my mom simply adores him. So here we are. At this point, she decides to make herself what we today would call an investigative reporter. Not surprising, her first stories would be about the plight of the working girl and then calling for reform in the state's divorce laws. She then did a series about the factory girls of Pittsburgh. Despite the fact that she's killing it at this type of journalism, she's often left to the ladies' pages covering things like fashion and flower shows.
Mm-mm.
This is clearly not her jam. Um, Bly somehow convinces the editors to let her be a foreign correspondent in Mexico, where she observes and then sends back stories about the everyday life of the Mexican people, as well as government's unfair imprisonment and the censorship of Mexican journalists.
That's not a bad
She's not,
gig.
I know, right? She's not there long before she is threatened with arrest. So she comes home. The dispatch again puts her back in the ladies' column. She has had quite enough of that and leaves a note at the dispatch for Wilson, the original columnist who wrote the article she was not having fun with. Um, In the note, she basically says, "Dear QO, I'm off for New York. Look out for me. Bly."
Oh, I love that.
I think that's so fabulous. So Bly moves to New York City, and for about 6 months, she knocks on literally everyone's door, just looking for a paper to take her work seriously. Women'sHistory.org says that she wanted to write a story on the immigrant experience in the United States. And I just think that's we're not even past 1900 yet, and I feel like she's very forward thinking in the topics that she wants to cover because she's living them. And for me, that was a really interesting, like, not juxtaposition, but like a really interesting moment to like realize that she is living in the early 20th century, but looking at topics that still today get such terrible coverage. And she is like, nope, we need to talk about the thing. And I love that. One day, after all these months of knocking on the door, she meets John Cockrell. He's the managing editor of Joseph Pulitzer's The New York World. He does one of two things. Either he boldly challenges her in a bid to get rid of her, or he, like, he, long story short, he asks her to do the story about the mentally ill her house in the notorious institution on Blackwell Island. More specifically, the women's lunatic asylum there. Now, I didn't know this before I started working on the story, but Blackwell Island, for a good portion of the early 20th century, housed asylums, prisons, and almshouses. I thought it was just an asylum, just an institution there. I had no idea there was multiple things going on.
Yeah, I was under the impression it was just the one.
Right? Local New Yorkers at the time referred to the place as Welfare Island. So I think in his mind, he is either she is going to knock this out of the park, so it's a bold challenge, or this is going to go totally sideways and I won't have to deal with this woman anymore.
I
Um,
mean, it's a win-win for him, let's be honest.
right? I think that's what he's thinking, like when he challenge puts this challenge on the table. That's what I meant to say earlier, but I just figured out the words in the right order this time. However, she does it. One source says she poses as someone with amnesia. Another source says she's impersonating, quote, a mad person, which we know today could be representative of any mental condition. They're totally not understood at the time. They're not well known at the time, so anything under the sun you could think of, but most sources, I think, suggest she goes in under the pretense of amnesia. While inside, she finds, quote, other patients who had been committed when they were also healthy. Many of these patients could not speak fluent English, so they could not convince the nurse that they were actually sane. While she was there, Bly documented the abuse and neglect, both the physical and the emotional abuse coming from the caretakers, and this could range from cold showers, disgusting living conditions, to spoiled food. If you can think it, like the gambit, they're not caring for these people. Bly writes a book about her experience at Blackwell Island. The book itself is called 10 Days in a Madhouse. This book, as well as her story, which appear in the New York World with illustrations. So she does like a series that are released over time in the New York World. Um, they spark the public and politicians alike, and they demand hospital and asylum reform, as well as the money to do so across the US. And as you can imagine, this shoots Bly to fame, right? Like, I don't think he really realized what he was getting himself into when he put this young lady on the task. Like, she was gonna do the thing, and she absolutely did. And it also must be said, she is only 23 years old,
I love the chutzpah.
right? Like, the panache this young lady has. Her peers are jealous enough to call her new reporting style stunt reporting because we can't call it anything else. We just can't call her a journalist. She's clearly doing stunts. This is just a PR thing. Bly would spend most of her life exposing all types of corruptions and injustice, like across the board, including calling people out by name. Like
Yes.
she wrote your name on the wall if she felt that there was some sort of corruption within your program. That included doctors even. Like she had no qualms. In fact, in Chicago in 1894, she covered the Pullman Railroad strike as the only journalist to cover the strikers' perspective.
Oh, that's novel.
Right? Oh, crazy idea, don't you think? Um, right around this time, she decides she kind of wants to travel the world. She's very inspired by Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. And I'm not sure exactly how she manages to get the New York World to cover it, but they do. It sounds like there might have been a little bit of competition amongst other journalists, and so the New York's like, yep, let's do it. But they cover the trip and they publish daily updates on her journey. And as you can bet, the entire country is following her story. However, the editor had only given her a couple of days' notice to prepare for this.
Oh, geez.
So she wants, very inspired by Jules Verne, she wants to make it around the world in 80 days or less. She is like, yes, I am on board. The editor's like, great, you've got 2 days. And so,
Oh, it's like I've got to find a cat sitter.
e- exactly. So she has this fabulous traveling dress made. I'll show you a picture of it. It's pretty fantastic. And she purchases a bag. The bag itself is about 7 inches tall and it's 16 inches wide and is packed, according to her words, with, quote, two traveling caps, three veils, a pair of slippers, a complete outfit of toilet articles, inkstand,
What are
pens,
toilet
pencils.
articles?
I'm assuming like shampoo, the brush, the things like that, the things you would use in the bathroom.
But it's an outfit with toilet articles?
No, these are the things that she's got in her bag.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
imagining like a multi-pocketed robe that is just like a one and done. Sorry, I was
No,
confusing.
this is what's in her bag that's 7 by 16 inches.
Okay.
So we have the complete outfit of toilet articles, inkstand, pens, pencils, a copy paper, pins, needles and thread, a dressing gown, a tennis blazer, a small flask and a drinking cup, several complete changes of underwear, a liberal supply of handkerchiefs, fresh roachings, and most bulky and uncompromising of all, a jar of cold cream to keep my face from chapping in the varied climates I should encounter. To keep my face from chapping.
Honestly, her to-go bag sounds pretty in depth.
I know, I'm here for it. It's a nice little duffel. Her trip starts on November 14th, and just 2 days later, a competitor would join the race. A one Elizabeth Bisland going in the opposite direction.
Now, Bly doesn't know that this competitor's joined the mix, does she?
I'm under the understanding that she does, based on the fact that the American people are clamoring for stories about these two girls, and newspapers across the country are filled with information. So I think she has access to this knowledge. However, they are not on the same vessels. They're going opposite directions. So they don't cross paths. Um, like the world is pretty much enthralled with this, and everyone wants to know who's going to make it to New York first, Nellie Bly or Elizabeth Bisland. About day 9, the London correspondent for the New York World informs Bly that he has received a letter from the Jules Verne himself, inviting Bly to visit him and his wife at their home.
Mhm.
You can imagine she made time for that. On day 35, in Singapore, she adopted a monkey and called him McGinty.
I'm here for this.
And I just know if she was alive today, she would be your typical white lady in leggings and Uggs and have 75 rescue animals. There's no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind.
Yeah. No, there would be the house pony.
I literally was just gonna say, and she'd be telling her husband she needs a house pony or mini Highland cows. Like, I just know it. In Canton, which is Gonzo now, in on day 42, she visits a leper colony. So she's seeing some things. Japan would be her favorite place, and after spending time with the geishas, she would even write, quote, "If I loved and married, I would say to my mate, 'Come, I know where Eden is,' and desert the land of my birth for Japan, the land of love, beauty, poetry, and cleanliness."
I mean, she's not wrong.
Our girl loves Japan. Day 58, as she's preparing to leave Yokohama, she hears the band of the USS Omaha play a short concert in her honor. Later that same day, aboard the Oceanic, which is the vessel she is boarding, she learns that the officers had written the following couplet all over the engine room for her. For Nellie Bly, will win or die, January 20, 1890. And I just
Oh,
love how many people are totally invested on their part of her journey. Day 70, customs and railroad officials stay up the whole night to assure that she has transferred trains in as little time as possible. She leaves Oakland, California, in a privately chartered train that consists of just the sleeping car and one engine. The little train goes southward past the farms and homesteads of California's San Joaquin Valley. She's passing through places, and I just had to share this because this is my neck of the woods. She's passing through places like Lathrop, Modesto, Merced, Fresno, Bakersfield, and
and
everyone
everything's
stops.
brown. Everything is brown.
Probably has to be. Everyone stops to watch as she flies by on her little train. At 3:51 p.m. on January 25th, 1890, the train pulls into the station in Jersey City, New Jersey. 72 days, 6 hours, and 11 minutes since she left. Elizabeth Bisland would complete the goal for the Cosmopolitan on January 30th at 1:30 in the afternoon, so just 5 days later. So our girl sets the record for the first speed record for global I don't know, say circumnavigation,
Travel.
I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, global
circumnavigation
travel.
works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Of her adventures, she would say, quote, "It seemed as if my greatest success was the personal interest of everyone who greeted me." Because everybody took stock in assuming they were going to be part of her winning the race, and I love that. She did continue to publish more great pieces of journalism after that, but then at age 30, she marries millionaire Robert Seaman and retires from journalism.
Good for her.
I know, get it, girl. Bly's husband dies in 1903, and he leaves her in control of his massive ironclad manufacturing company and American Steel Barrel Company, something her father was not able to do for her mother. And she was successful in business as well. She would go on to patent several inventions related to oil manufacturing. Many are still used today. National Parks Service tells us that she rode in the 1913 suffrage parade in Washington, D.C., and in her coverage of the event, she predicted that it would be at least 1920 before women would get the vote. As a as
I
a
hate that
business
she was
person,
right.
right? As a business person, as a boss, she prioritized the welfare of her employees, providing both healthcare benefits and recreational facilities. Pre 1920, this woman has seen the things, she knows what's important, and provides healthcare benefits,
You go to a leper colony or two, and suddenly you get the idea that maybe seeing a doctor preventatively is helpful.
right? Unfortunately for Bly, she wasn't great with finances and fell victim to some fraud committed by employees that led her to eventually have to declare bankruptcy. History.org says that, quote, "In her later years, Bly returned to journalism covering World War I from Europe, and she continues to shed light on major issues that impacted women. While still working as a writer, Bly died from pneumonia on January 27th, 1922. She was just 58 years old.
Wow.
I've got some really fabulous photos.
I am here for it.
So, I don't know if, can you see it?
Can you scroll down so I can see the full image?
This top
Okay.
one.
Yep. So there is a photo that has a background of almost a Shields green wallpaper with Nellie Bly rocking some very intense bangs.
She's got the fringe. Girl
Yeah.
got the fringe.
Now the
The,
fringe it goes up in a semicircle and her hair is pulled back in a bun, but she has some bright eyes.
hmm I think this photo is obviously due to a colorizing of the time. But you can see it all over the internet. It's a pretty fun photo. The photo to the right, I believe, was her trip while she was investigating the world.
Yeah, it looks like she's using a Pendleton woven wool blanket as a backdrop as she's in this very frilly gown.
Yeah. This is a plate from her journey home, which I think is really fun.
Okay, so she is in kind of a Sherlock Holmes outfit, but it's a dress. It looks like she is in a crowded place, maybe at a train station, um,
hmm
being greeted by a variety of people.
Now this is the dress. It is that dress.
Ah, okay. So it is a uh brown, maybe black. It's a black and white photo, so it's hard to tell the exact color, but it's a very checked or gingham pattern.
hmm
She has a dark gown underneath with a crosshatch pattern, and she's holding her bag and her hat. She has a very um I just traveled a long ways kind of look.
Right? And that bag she's holding is the bag that held all of her stuff. So one of the fun moments of her time was that particularly men, but everyone in general suspected that a woman could not travel without, 10 trunks and all of the porters needed to carry all of her things. And Nellie would have absolutely no qualms. Like when she was boarding a vessel, they would be like, "Oh, where are your trunks, ma'am? We'll send the porters down to get them." And she would just hold up her bag and be like, "Oh, I've already brought my things on. Thank you." And it like lived to throw people for that loop that we actually don't need 27 steamer trunks um to make it from point A to point B.
I mean, to know that she traveled the world in a purse, that
hmm
outdoes even me, and I can do an international trip with a carry-on in winter.
Right? Like she had plans and she was gonna stick to them and she was gonna stick it to the man. Like, no, we're very capable, thank you. But she seems to have done it with a lot of like delight and humor. Like no gentlemen, sir, it's really okay. And one of the really fun things is one of the sources that I gave you um actually has like a breakdown of her day of the journey so that you as the reader can go through and find them. It's HeinzHistoryCenter.org, Women Forging the Way, Nellie Bly Around the World. Um, you can actually scroll down and it gives you like day by day, day one, day six, day three, day nine, like what she was doing, where she was, what she experienced. And it was really, really hard for me to not just do her story on that. But I thought her origins and her upbringing were so important to who she was and what she overcame, and the fact that she had this desire and willingness to go into the asylum just to investigate the conditions there at a time when that seems so unlikely to have happened that I
Right.
couldn't not just do like a brief snapshot of her whole life. Like she coined I don't say she coined the phrase, but she was the trailblazer behind investigative journalism. Like we have what we have today because she was willing to do what she did. and that's pretty cool.
That is really neat. Thank you for sharing her.
You're welcome. You can thank my husband who was like, "Oh, girl, I got you."
I mean, I'm here for that. I really am. And I will say that thankfully some of our listeners have been emailing us stories because they recognize that I check the email and your husband gives you all of your stories.
Gives me a lot of them. He gets if I don't if I pick a story that I found on my own or that I like came across my desk of my own free will and I don't tell his story that week, he gets very upset. Like he's betrayed that I didn't choose one of the offerings he gave me. And I'm like, well, I am capable. I can find things of my own free will.
I
But then he
love that
makes
you
this
get
like,
guilted by that, that he uses you to like, hey, I want you to research this for me. I found this great little
yes,
headline.
yes, like, okay, so, and he does these really fun things. Like, we'll be sitting at dinner, and typically the rule in our house is at dinner at the table, your phone is not with you. However, we have spent a lot of time on the road the last 6 months because of sports and things. So while we're waiting for our food, we're either playing pool with our kids from across the table via our phones, or my husband is looking at fun little articles and he will get the weirdest set of words and he'll find something out of it. And I'll be like, "What did you type in? What did you put into Google to find that?" Like I must know. And he'll just smile and be like, "Enjoy."
I love this for you.
He's a stinker. I'm not going to tell him you love this because he'll only feel more vindicated in his actions when I don't pick his story.
I mean, look, these are all things, and I can text him myself. If you've enjoyed this story, if you're thinking, wow, I have loved this mashup, I've laughed, I've cried, I want to hang out again, come back next week. But you can rate and you can review and you can do this really cool thing where you subscribe. We'd prefer the rating, but the subscription part is cool too. Also, email us unhinged.historypod@gmail.com. And by the time this episode airs, check out our website, which is unhingedhistory.com.
So cool.
And on that note, goodbye.
Bye. Um, okay. I'm getting my act together.
No, don't do it on my account.